Hello, everyone. Welcome to another show, IT Career Talk with Professionals. And today we have a back-end engineer. So, our guest for today is none other than Paul de Paula. Hey, Paul, good afternoon, good evening, no? Or good morning, depending to our audience.
Yeah, hi Rafael. Yeah, good morning, good evening, everyone, to all the viewers.
Right. So, Paul,
So it's nice to be here.
let's ask what is a back-end engineer, no? What is that the same as software engineer? Is that the same as a full stack? No? Can you describe your role for us?
Hmm. So this is actually specific to our company. Backend engineer is your bounded. Your role is basically you're just doing all the backend stuff for the company. But
Right.
yes, definitely it's part of the software engineering. Just a very specific role. And I just I just took the position last month. I've been in the managerial position for like 4 years, and now because I mean uh, I'm really a technical person, so I really like even if I was in the managerial position, I usually probably 50-60% of my time is devoted to coding technical stuff.
Right,
Mm.
right. No? And what do you call this? Now that you're back in coding, no? Ano yung tech stack mo? What do you what do you code in? What languages
Hmm.
and even what you know what infrastructure do you use, no? Especially since
Hmm.
back end ka, I would assume na hindi masyadong
Hmm.
front end or hindi
Hmm.
nakikita ng users, no? So, what scripting do you use?
So we are heavily using Golang, Python, and of course, hindi mawawala yung DNA natin as a PHP developer.
Mm,
So, and then we do heavily automation. So we're using AWS, GCP, and yeah, we're heavily using the Google Kubernetes engine, and that's my day-to-day activities, doing stuff for the automation on our internal toolings at Pantheon.
right, right. So, what skills and value do you need to hone or anong parang ano pa to, pag nag-specialty ka, 'di ba? Kasi sabi mo bounded and very
Hmm.
gusto mo parang deep yung knowledge mo dito sa back-end, no? So ano yung skill set na
Hmm.
parang kailangan mo i-master para maging successful ka sa back-end?
I think the skills that you need to master is on how to efficiently search Google on what you wanna do, because everybody does that. Yeah, I think that's a skill. How in
Mm-hmm.
order to find a specific solution to your problem. Um, and then of course, I mean, technically, you have to hone your skills on the cloud products, of course, the Kubernetes, and you need to also experience how it looks like in AWS, how it looks like in GCP or in Azure, and in any other cloud providers. So I think that is one.
Mm-hmm.
In So you will be able to know the difference between these providers. Um,
Right, right. And so kaning
and I think second is
parang basically
sige, sige bro.
Parang madaming infrastructure yung kailangan mong malaman, no? Kasama din ba to database? Kasi
Mm.
or iba yung infrastructure engineer sa back-end engineer? Is it more parang just to see lang, no? Kung may lines ba talaga between infrastructure and back-end ba?
Actually, halos uh, yung role ko ngayon is parang nasa infra and back end, because I'm
Mm,
also taking care of our infrastructure. setting up our clusters and doing performance monitoring for all our internal tools. So yun yung mga tools na ginagamit namin is yun. I don't know if you're familiar with when you're in GCP, there are actually monitoring products within its core.
Right.
But because I'm a New Relic fan over the years,
yes.
so I'm using New Relic to monitor our Kubernetes instances.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you were mentioning, you were also mentioning a second skill set that you would need to master as a backend.
Yes. Second is, of course, you need to hone your scripting skills. These are your Python, your Golang, and along those lines, you have also to master the automation tools, different automation tools like Terraform, CloudFormation, things like that. And of course, your CI and CD. There are a lot of CI/CD products out there. GitHub Action, we're also using that. Our Circle CI.
Right.
And all other ranges like Bitbucket, they have its own CI within the core. So kasi kapag alam mo na yung the flow, it will, it's easier for you to jump in to, kung gumagamit ka man ng Circle CI before, when you jump into GitHub Actions, you'll see a different you see the same pseudocode or the same
concept lang, no? Iba lang yung
flow. Yes, same concept. Yes.
Right.
So yun, you need to master on how to easily adaptive to these products.
Right.
So yeah.
Let's talk more about the journey or your journey next. No? You did mention you also were a manager, IT manager, and now you're back into more technical, hands-on. No? But even before that, maybe especially for our audience na young ones, how did you even pick your career? Parang basically, nung high school ka pa lang or nung college ka pa lang, naisip mo na, gusto ko talaga mag-IT. Paano nagsimula?
I came from a family that we cannot provide having a computer that time. Those are around probably 2000, 2001, I think, that year. So what I do is
and mahal din ang computer at the time, no? Grabe. Oo, for
yes.
Sure.
During my high school days, ang ginagawa ko is when I was a first year, kinaibigan ko yung may-ari ng computer provider sa school namin.
Okay.
Computer provider, yes. So yun, kailangan kong maging runner, help them buy stuff, and then because of that, they let me play with the computers. So ganun lagi yung ginagawa ko. Even sa I have some friends na may mga computers, so I befriend them so I can be able to use their computers.
Right.
Kasi hindi nga kami kayang mag-provide ng family ko. And then nung college ako, I actually took up software engineering course. Mind you, hindi ako nakabili ng laptop or wala akong computer or laptop during my tenure as a software engineering student.
Right.
Kasi nakikiram lang ako sa dormmate. And I spend most of my time sa mga labs, sa mga computer shops. And ngayon parang, di ba, almost all students, I think non-tech students, may mga laptops na. So
Right.
Very
Kasi
fortunate silang, I mean,
may
our kids
netbooks na rin,
now
no?
are very
Oo.
fortunate. Oo. Saka yung smartphones mo, pwede mo na i-convert into your development
Tools,
workstation.
yeah. True.
So, mm, so wala nang parang hindrance na wala kasi akong computer kaya hindi ako kumuha ng ganitong course. Baka mahirapan ako, parang ganun.
Right. So nahilig ka talaga sa computer, no? Ever since nung high school ka pa lang. Is it because may particular parang dahil maganda siya tingnan, o parang mahilig ka sa math, or mahilig ka sa logic? Parang napaisip ka talaga na
Mahilig ako sa piano. You know, the
sa
MIDI files.
piano.
So my first basic computer programming lessons is the QBasic. Diba yung mga I know a lot of millennials hindi na encounter yung mga ganitong, like, you know, the DOS command, playing your games using diskettes, or your floppy disk, or your micro floppy disk. So yun yung pinanggalingan kong era. Kaya very fortunate talaga yung mga nagle-learn from today's.
Right. So, now na natapos ka na sa pinili mong course, how did you land your first job naman, or how did you pick your first job?
My first job was a PHP developer for a German company.
Right.
In 2006. Actually, for the last 6 months when I was there, I was just learning PHP. I mean, my boss is really, I'm really fortunate to my boss kasi he's been paying us just for us to learn during the time PHP and Joomla. Kaya ako na-involve sa community, sa Joomla community. I was part of the founding members of the Joomla Philippines. And I think that was in 2008.
Right. So, basically, fortunate ka yung company na napili mo. Parang may bootcamp sila, may training sila sa loob. And so that's why parang pinag-aral kayo. Ganun ba yun?
Hindi masyado. Parang kanya-kanya. You need to learn it from your own. Kaya parang doon ka lang para mag-aral. From 8 to 5. Parang paglampas nga ng 5 p.m. parang ayaw ko pang umuwi. Gusto ko pang mag-aral.
Right.
So, na-enjoy ko talaga yung working in that company kasi it was my learning time for me.
Right. So, nag-start ka sa sabihin natin parang junior developer, no? And after a couple of years, after ilang X years, parang na-feel mo na parang, ay, senior developer na ako. Is it more the years, or parang more of like may na parang an X number of projects, parang naisip mo, uy, parang pwede na ako matawag na senior?
Actually, 3 months lang na nagle-learn ako sa company na yon. I got a freelancing gig.
Okay.
And from there, I got a few projects. And then, natatap. I think my first project was Joomla e-commerce site. So from there, I think after 7 months of working in that company, parang confident na ako na tawagin, PHP developer na ako, and I think it's time to upgrade my skill sets. So I joined the PHP users group Philippines, right. and during that time, I think that was the most active organization. Software. Open source org that time. And then we have Then I was involved in the PHP roadshows. I think the first roadshow that we did was in Ama, Makati.
Mm-hmm.
This these are in this I think it was in 2008.
Right, right.
2008 hanggang 2011. And yun, nagsusulputan na lahat ng mga open source communities. And mirroring the roadshows.
So at this time, very active ka sa Joomla, PHP. When did you start to hone down on Drupal itself? No? Parang since I know you, na parang medyo very, you are also an advocate of Drupal, no? How did that start, or how did that end up na Drupal yung pinili mo?
Ayun, good question. So, being in the Joomla community, doing projects using Joomla, when I applied for a job in a company, ang first na nakita ko doon is, I think I will be working to build the ABS-CBN project website using Joomla. So, sabi, very interesting. Parang gusto ko to. So, I took the job. Pero, ABS-CBN, but we'll be using Drupal as a platform. Sabi ko, this is very interesting. Pero I'm a Joomla developer. And sabi ko, why not we use... So, baka naman pwede ko pang kumbinsihin yung management.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
So, I took the job. I assigned in the ABS-CBN project. Ngayon, sinabi ko nga na baka pwede pa nating gawin tong Joomla kasi alam ko na kung paano gagawin to. Pero talagang it was a management decision and hindi na namin pwede pang i-change yung decision. So, nag-aral tuloy ako ng Drupal at that time.
Right.
So, from Joomla, naging Drupal ako. And it was hard kasi kung i-compare mo the Drupal and Joomla that time, si Joomla pag install mo, beautiful na. Si Drupal pag in-install mo ng time na yun, it's so boring na parang ayoko na, parang uninstall ka agad. So, ganun yung perception. Pero sabi kasi, nakalagay doon na Drupal was built for developers. Joomla was built for mga designers, agencies. So sabi ko, developer ako eh. So I have to, kailangan ko maging patient.
Yes.
I learned it, and after a few weeks, na-appreciate ko yung beauty of Drupal and the way it was built to cater integration, scaling performance. So I fell in love with the platform, and since then we were able to we managed to set up the abscbnnews.com. That was in 2009. We 2010. Built it in 2010. So natapos namin mga 2010. And yun, tumakbo yung site na yun for 5 years. I think pinalitan na nila ngayon. It's now under a proprietary software. Pero they were happy at that time with the performance of Drupal. And it was the biggest Drupal in Asia. Having it can withstand 5 million page views a day. Running on Windows Server 2003.
Wow.
Imagine, Drupal was built to run it on Linux machines. But during the time, we made it run on Windows Server 2003, handling 5 million page views a day. So, yun yung naging, siguro, one of my milestones in the Drupal community. I was able to present it I was open with this in my presentation, my previous talks. Mm.
Right, right, right. Afterwards,
Mm.
before you joined your current company, I did scan through your LinkedIn. For our audience, I will also place
Mm.
Paul's LinkedIn in the description. And when any audience will look at it, no, they might ask, Sir Paul, we noticed na parang almost average, no, before your current company, average parang 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. Is that normal progression for IT, or parang ano yung parang ano yung advice mo on this? Should developers
Mm.
stick to a long company, or when they're young, really parang 2 years, 2 years, 2 years would be a uh, good recommendation?
I think the reason why I jump every 2 years to another company is
Mm.
parang you feel sometimes you felt like you're lacking. Sometimes you're just bounded in parang lagi na lang ganito yung ginagawa ko. Hindi ka na makapag-explore. Parang napag-iiwanan ka na ng mga technology na makabago. So I think that was one of the reasons why I jumped into another company, because as a software developer or as an engineer, dapat you need to make sure that your technology is always up to date. Sabi nga, di ba, every 3 months or probably less, nagbabago yung technology natin. So you have to make sure that you're always updated with it. So I think that's the reason why I think having in Pantheon for now 5 years, because Pantheon every year we always innovate, we always make sure that our technology that we are using is up to date and up to the standards of the big companies like
Right.
like
So
Google or Azure or AWS. So yun.
parang there's always new learning in your current company, Pantheon, that you mentioned, and so that's why parang it's always growing, or at least hindi ka na iiwanan in your field.
Yes.
Speaking about Pantheon, no, and you also mentioned this a while ago, parang naging manager ka, or at least parang more or less, parang can you expound on what your role was, or your management style, or anong position mo when you became just before you returned back to software engineer? Parang you mentioned na you had a managerial role.
Okay. So back in 2016, when I joined Pantheon, I was actually hired as a customer success engineer.
Okay.
And after a year, I was transferred to the customer success management,
All right.
where we handle more of a customer facing, talking with their technical leads and explaining them that this is how your site looks like in Pantheon. So we're giving them reports, performance analysis of their site.
Right.
So yun yung naging wrong. And then after a year, I was transferred to the professional services. And that time, our professional services has a sub departments. So I was assigned in the platform solutions. And that's where I do load testing, doing solution architecture, and well, it's all over again. It's a customer facing, and then three different position in the professional services. Doing custom development, I went in that position for almost a year, and then I was assigned to man our onboarding management just 2 years ago. This is to onboard all our enterprise clientele joining Pantheon. So yun nga, again, I usually talk with their tech leads and their stakeholders in the company. So yung kailangan mo talaga doon is you need to make sure that you're confident to talk with their president, their stakeholders in the company, and at the same time, you're confident in talking in technical lingo.
Right.
So,
So basically, mas customer-facing ka dito, no? For the
mm,
last, let's say, sabihin natin parang the last 4 years, parang ganyan, customer-facing.
uh, customer facing 60% and other 40% on the side I do our internal tools, doing automation. Isa sa mga milestone ko doon is we have this paperworks. This is actually a report that we do probably 6 hours doing that report. So sabi ko, I told my boss, hey boss, maybe we can automate this. So that's where I learned Kubernetes. I learned Python because I was a Drupal developer. Well, I learned Python. Python to do your scripts. But this time I had to write my own Python scripts, like doing Flask. And so back to the automation script that I did. From 6 hours, I was able to reduce it to 2 hours to automate it. And then I learned how to Dockerize the apps and how to make it more portable so it can be used by my colleagues. And now from 6 hours, we can process to build that report in 1 hour and a half. So probably, yun na, magkakape ka lang, babalik ka na lang, and the report is done.
Right. And then this is when afterwards you decided na parang go to software engineering, and so parang natanggal na yung customer-facing side. Or may konting customer-facing side pa rin?
May konti, siguro probably mga 10% na lang.
10% na lang.
And pero yung hindi nagbabago, since I joined Pantheon, my mentoring skills, sabi mo nga, is what is my management style?
Yes.
There are four kinds of management styles. Ako kasi I'm more of a coaching and transformational. When I was hired in the company, I think we were 3 in the company, and during the time I was busy in the Drupal Filipinas community, giving talks, giving trainings, workshops, and I never expected that Pantheon will invest in the Philippines. And now I think mga nasa 40 na kami dito sa APAC. Probably because of that strong mindset of the Filipinos. Kasi kapag, di ba, we value our work, our culture, our teamwork, talagang Filipinos stands and parang we are really good at work. So, yun yung culture na inimplant namin sa Pantheon's.
So, I'll just go to my last question, kasi we're almost at 30 minutes, which is basically, again, given that you have been given talks before and spreading your knowledge, so people obviously they look at you and they say, wow, Paul has has the skill set, is a good developer. And so our last question is basically how to be you po, no? Or parang anong advice mo especially to the youth now, or to the graduating students? Ano yun lang yung advice mo sa career nila?
How to be you po. You don't have to be me. Each of us has a destiny, and the Lord prepares us perfectly. There's a unique and proper time for you. So I would advise probably, stick to the leaders, to the community leaders, probably other leaders in the tech community, and cherry pick each of those traits. You don't need to, step by step dapat gagayahin mo ako or siya. Yun lang advice ko. Kailangan mong cherry pick the good traits and try to apply that in yourself. and be around with the people that will not will put you down, but will raise you up.
Right,
And
right. Magandang advice yan, no? From be in company with people who are like
mm,
positive and are really parang maingganyo ka rin, no? Parang birds of the same feather flock together. Parang ganun.
yes, kung dati-rati kasama mo yung mga naglalaro sa Dotahan. So now change that and be around with tech people that will help you extend the bar
Right, right.
in your career. So yun lang, and I hope nakatulong yung mga advice namin dito.
And guys, no, although disclaimer lang, hindi inibig sabihin na hindi kami nagdodota. Balance lang siguro yung gaming namin. Balance lang yung gaming
Yun,
namin.
tama,
Hindi nakakasira yung gaming namin, yung sinasabi nila kaka-computer o kaka-games mo yan, nakakasira ng relasyon. No? Hindi, dapat balance lang talaga.
Oo, and pwede rin kasi na kung gusto mo talagang mag-Dota na lang forever, pwede kang maging game analyst, di ba? Or maging game developer.
Pwede, no?
Kasi,
basta tamang lang, no? Kung gaming talaga, di career, parang gawin mong career, no? Parang yung passion mo. Oo. Huwag mong gawing parang lang, yung parang distraction, gawin mong career. Tama. Right? Okay, so thank you again, Sir Paul, no? Audience, if you have any questions or may mga comments kayo, you can always leave it below in YouTube or in Facebook. You can leave it in the comment box and we'll get back to you, no? But before we end, Sir Paul, meron ka bang any last words or any parang shout out na or invites na gusto mong sabihin sa audience natin?
Siguro yung last advice ko is sa career development, no? Yun nga, meron lang akong i-share na this is actually my life verse.
Life verse, okay. Ganda yan.
Ito talagang laging ito yung isa sa mga life verse ko. So Psalms 90:12. So teach us to number our days. Yes. So teach us to number our days that we may present to you a heart of wisdom. So ito laging nakatatak lagi ito na it's time to build our career. So hindi habang buhay lagi tayong estudyante or lagi tayong
bata, di ba?
Bata or lagi na lang nasa bahay na walang ginagawa, di ba? So we have to teach our heart of wisdom. Kailangan nating matuto. So learn lalo na during this pandemic days. So we have lots of teaching materials. Si Rhel laging may mga pa-workshop sa AWS, may pa-certificate pa, di ba? So go for it. Wag nating sayangin yung oras natin. So number our days.
Lagay natin yan sa description din, guys, no? Para mabasa niyo yan, no? Kita. Alright, so that's it. Thank you so much. And of course, if you like our content, don't forget to always hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell.